And, let's, oh, here's the,
Yeah, push the return button here.
Oh.
If you
all right. You need a chair then? All right, so, this is the first hearing, for Article 14, the proposed solar energy system, amendment. So, Rich Brown just gave me this is a summary, so I haven't really read this, but I'll read it in trust. The intent of the solar energy system zoning amendment is to codify the rules for granting requests for ground-mounted arrays, roof-mounted arrays, unless they affect the height of the footprint of the supporting building would not be affected. Does everybody agree with that? A small SES up to 2,000 feet of footprint. This is a 40 by 50 foot area, the size of a modest barn, not a boasting barn. These would be allowed by right as long as they are not taller than 21 feet and are not in the front yard of any building in the Lyme Common District or Lyme Center District. The only thing I'm wondering about with our footprint, we're using these footprints as measurement tools, but not as coverage area tools. So I think that's a big distinction that people should be aware of. So when we're using these figures, I think that's a flaw, and one of the flaws that in the amendment is the confusion that people are having about, most people think that these are the actual, and most people I spoke to think that these are the actual measurements, the actual coverage area. Okay.
Also, the language really was not just in the front yard, but between the building and any
Right.
road.
Right,
This is
there's a
just,
little squishiness here, and
Okay,
if people
okay.
ask us specific questions, we
but
can.
that's good,
Gotcha.
it's
Yes,
good that you
thank
bring
you.
it,
Gotcha.
because this is just in
Hot
off
off
the
the
press.
press.
Right,
A small SES could have as much as 2,500 of solar panel area, about 140 individual panels at 300, this I don't know, at 350 watts per panel, a maximal small SES might generate between 40 and 50 kilowatts, enough for 2 to 5 average homes, 2,500 square feet at 17.5 square feet. Panel is about 140 panels. I know nothing
right,
about
I
it.
just wrote that down in case I had to reprise it.
Take it as you will. Large SES up to 20,000 square foot of footprint. Again, one of the things that came out when we were looking at the Kearsarge suggestions is, Rich Maggie, you're the one who came up with a figure that these could be as big as 2.5 to 3 acres, which was news to me at that point.
Right.
So large SES up to 20,000 square feet of footprint. This is about half an acre of lot coverage. Again, that's misleading, and might occupy a full acre. Is this what?
That's, well, I would accept that. I don't know quite what the spacing on all the rows would be, but,
Okay,
yeah, an acre or two.
but you came up with, your solar guy came up with 2.5
To 3 acres.
to 3 acres.
Okay, all right, I would accept that amendment.
If it would generate about 500 kilowatts of energy, and with normal spacing of racks of panels would cover about an acre. Again,
Okay, and
we have had indirect feedback. Rich Mengy spoke to who was it you spoke to?
Catamount Solar,
And
Randolph.
And he said 2.5 to 3,
Mhm.
okay, acres. I actually, Rich, that was my impression.
Yep,
Before I
okay.
heard this, I thought it would be about an acre.
Okay,
So, All right, and a large SES requires a conditional use permit where the planning board reviews the proposed installation and receives information about noise, glare screening, and other requirements. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good help, thank you.
Thank you.
What's the board's pleasure? Shall we open it up to the public and then discuss things? All right, we have public here in public. Please state what you'd like to state. Ross?
I think things that have changed over the last year are the dramatic increase in the charge that people are paying for electricity in their homes. It's happened, we're here, and I don't see it going down even if the price of fuel oil and natural gas declines somewhat. I think the electric companies will keep the tariff where it is. I think there's more areas that are moving to cooperative solar, where people who do not have space for solar arrays on their property can join a cooperative that has a field with panels in it, and that cooperatively owned array will service people who pay their electric bill to themselves instead of to somebody else. And this move to cooperatives seems to be, I don't know whether anybody, have any of you received a contact from Encore? A
No,
company
I
that sent me a letter at the end of December saying that they sent me a description of my property in a colored map that showed gradients on the property, and told me that I have 25 acres that they would be happy to put a solar array on if I would lease it to them. And that they would pay me a yearly rent on that for 25 years. I contacted the outfit that is currently negotiating for a 25 acre plot further north of us at this point. They apparently have several others that they're in the process of discussing with people in New Hampshire. And when I asked what the expected average lease payment would be for 25 acres, the response was that they estimate it would be more or less $38,000 per year.
That's a lot different.
With an anticipated
Sure,
2% increase per year for 25 years. So that's what's out there.
Well, just, you may not know this, but none of us have, I guess none of us have been personally contacted, but a company from Boston called Kearsarge did come in, and they wanted to do a 4.6 acre array. They were paying much less.
We never knew what they were gonna pay Scott.
I
pretty.
Did he ever say that?
What was 1,000 an acre?
Pretty.
Yeah.
Did he say that? I don't remember him saying that.
I think that's what it.
I heard, I can't remember where I heard it, but I heard a figure and it was a lot less than that.
And
But anyway, continue.
I've not taken it any further, although I do have, and I was talking to their local person who's, easy to reach, but, I think I need to talk to the principal involved and confirm this information that I was given, although I have it in writing. It may obviously be not representative of what they're doing.
So,
So
first,
it's, I think, obviously, I think we need to, talk about, domestic, rules and regulations, with respect to solar. But I think we should, think about this the imminent arrival of cooperative solar and companies that will be putting together larger arrays to use for, selling to people in the more populated areas of the state, that, where land is cheap and where there are, sufficient, three-phase, lines to carry the, electricity from remote areas to more populous areas.
yeah, so one of the things that certainly came up when Kearsarge put the proposal forward, some of the questions that came up one was, well, do we want this to be for Lyme? Do we want to use this land in Lyme to supply energy south, or, primarily south? And those are pretty important questions. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I think it, first of all, we need assurance that, these outfits are legitimate. And that, they are, honest with respect to, what they're doing. And we need to have, regulations that meet that goal. But I think, I see nothing wrong with, well, let me say, we've had people in this town for quite some time saying, this town needs an industry that we can tax. And there haven't been, any such industries that have shown up yet. But I could see, that there are some people in this town would be very happy to take their 25 acres of lot that is, not possibly, according to our zoning regulations, useful for house lots, but, would be useful for a large solar array, and who might put in 25 acres, where the company comes in and, does the surveys, gets the permissions, builds the array, and then runs it for 25 years and pays you, if that $38,000 average payment is real, that would make some people in this town very happy to give up 25 acres of their woodlot and, see it clear cut and have an array put in there.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking
And
for
the
myself,
town-
having a 25 acre clear cut where you remove all that carbon storage to put up 25 acres of solar is not as great a deal as,
That's certainly true. On the other hand, if you're generating, you can convert carbon to number of kilowatt hours and ascertain what the avoidance of that, how much carbon you would avoid.
yeah, what the net
Using
gain or
what's
loss
the
would
net-
be.
What's the net carbon effect?
Right, and I, just generally, I have looked into that, and when you get into those sorts of discussions, the numbers get really slippery, because, they don't include the production of the panels, they don't include the transportation, the
Sure.
gas, it becomes just very, narrowed down. It's a tough
Yeah.
issue.
It's very true, and one way of approaching it is to ascertain what it costs you to produce a kilowatt hour of electricity and sell it in this particular setting. But it's pretty clear that in well-run, already we're down so that the combination of wind, solar in some places in the United States is lower than any other way to buy electricity.
Yeah,
Ross, is your 25 acres near three-phase power? Is your 25 acres near three-phase power?
They want it near three-phase power.
Right, is your 25 acres?
Mine, I don't think mine is.
Yeah.
and is it in the easement, or is that, free of easement?
I have, much of my property is in conservation easements.
Yeah, because a lot of the easement holders won't allow
That's true.
solar.
Yeah. I have 60 acres that is not in conservation easements, however. And I'm not proposing to do this. I'm just intrigued by the fact that people are getting serious about.
I don't think there's any doubt that, my sense, starting, I've heard other things, but starting with Kearsarge and now what you're saying is, it's kind of like a bit of a gold rush. Lyme has definitely been identified, and there's a lot of interest, is my impression, which is both, it's two things, it's here, and, that's a good thing, but the other thing that concerns me is that we be prepared, for the onslaught, basically,
Yeah,
for good and for bad.
that's right. I think that's why I bring it up.
Thank you.
And, I'll come back to it.
Yeah, we got a whole evening of entertainment, so don't.
Ross, I had another question for you. Did you have on the top of your mind the number of kilowatt hours or megawatts that this system, this 25 acre system might produce? Does that number stick in your mind?
It depends on, it depends on your site.
Sure, of course.
If you have if you're putting it on a north-facing hill, it's obviously different than on a south-facing or west-facing situation. It depends whether you have morning fog or not.
Right.
And whether you're up in the hills of Lyme, or whether you're down on the river. So a lot of factors that
Sure.
would go into calculating that number, and it's probably some places in town have twice as much power per square foot than
Sure.
others.
So
Sure, I was just asking to sort of calibrate my sensibilities,
Yeah.
but you're right, it's a squishy number.
And I'm the guy with 2 solar panels that float on a raft in Post Pond, because I have trees on them,
Yes.
trees
right.
in my place when
Yes,
I
I know.
tried to do it otherwise.
Mark, did you wanna say anything?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So Mark Bollinger with the Lyme Energy Committee, though I'm not necessarily representing the committee's views here tonight. So when I look at this amendment, I kind of think about it from the perspective of kind of the broader need to decarbonize the power sector, along with the more specific goal that Lyme adopted several years ago to achieve 100% renewable energy electricity consumption by 2030. And there are basically four ways we can achieve that goal, we can get to that 100% number. One is for the existing utilities that supply power, so Eversource and the co-op, to kind of shift their own mix towards renewable energy. And that is happening, but it's happening very slowly, and that's pretty much outside of our control. The second reason would be residential on-site solar power, which Lyme has done very well with. We have a pretty high penetration rate of Lyme residences that already have solar. And I think the proposed zoning amendment is fine on that count. I think it's very permissive, and so there's probably no need to discuss that. The third and fourth ways involve these larger ground-mounted systems. So the third way would be this community power effort whereby there's municipalities that kind of aggregate their residents' load, go out and sign up with an aggregator who then goes out and procures power on behalf of those municipalities. And they will be looking to buy power from larger renewable energy systems, but they've also expressed interest in buying power from more local systems or systems that are local to the communities that they serve. So that might involve, for example, if Lyme were to move in that direction, that might eventually involve whoever aggregator Lyme would go with buying power from a larger ground-mounted system in town. It's a possibility. So that's the third way. And then the fourth way is something we've talked about before, which is group net metering. And this is kind of what Ross was getting at, these kind of cooperatively owned systems whereby someone builds a large ground-mounted system, and then New Hampshire has a program that can be used to virtually offset the electricity bills of anybody who subscribes to that system. And so these the third and fourth way of kind of getting at this goal obviously involve these larger ground-mounted systems, and maybe the current zoning ordinance is fine as is, given that what we've just heard is that it would allow drip edge measurement up to 20,000 square feet, which equates to roughly 400 to 500 kilowatts, which is essentially half a megawatt. So it's half of what Kearsarge wanted to put in, essentially. Maybe that's enough, but on the other hand, when I think about it, that 20,000 square foot number seems, at least to me, to be a little bit of an arbitrary number. I'm not exactly sure where it came from. Granted, 1 megawatt is also kind of an arbitrary limit, but at least that 1 megawatt number is grounded in current policy and New Hampshire statute, given that it is the capacity limit for net metering in the state. And so I guess I'm slightly concerned that the amendment as currently written is kind of setting a threshold that is below what Lyme might eventually want to do, either for group net metering purposes or for community power purposes. Let's see, I lost my train of thought there, but I guess the other thing is, obviously with the Kearsarge proposal coming in late in the game, that's kind of demonstrated that there is interest in these types of systems locally. We just heard from Ross, another example. And so, it remains a possibility that Lyme might want to move towards a larger system, something on the order of 1 megawatt. And everything's still, we're still really early in the game in terms of figuring out how we're going to move towards this 2030 goal. And so I guess I'm a little concerned that if this amendment goes forward to the town for a vote at this year's town meeting, and it passes, that any future effort to try and expand the size limit would potentially meet with resistance, because at that point, we would have a current zoning amendment in place, and it would, at that point, be pretty easy to attack and probably defeat any effort to expand that system, or expand the size limit of those systems going forward. So I don't know, I guess I just kind of wanted to float the idea of potentially tabling the amendment for one more year. I know you guys have been working on it forever, and I think you've done some really good work here. But the prospect of potentially doing something larger than 20,000 square feet that could still potentially be in keeping with Lyme's rural character, I think is a possibility that we should not necessarily forego by kind of rushing this amendment to a vote this year. And I think that's mostly what I wanted to say.
So, just a couple of things. First of all, thank you, because your presentations are always so thoughtful. I don't think, I mean, at least to my mind, I don't think the 20,000 was, arbitrary. We kept on looking for essentially where the comfort zone was.
Yeah.
We have, 7,000 or 8,000 people on this board, and, we were where were people gonna feel comfortable? And at the beginning of, things, apropos to what you're saying, things are changing so fast, which gives me pause. I keep feeling like we're 2 steps behind where we need to be, because things are moving so fast. When Kearsarge came in, there was a whole bunch of information that was completely new, to me certainly, and I assume to most of us. So I know that you're on that one committee,
LEAC.
the LEAC, and Jim Nurse is on the other, now.
He's on the LEAC too.
Oh, I thought he was on wasn't he on something?
Yeah, Jim is also on the Energy Committee.
He's on both the
Yeah.
Energy Committee
Yeah.
and LEAC.
Oh, okay, I thought he was on a different committee.
No.
It's the same one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so he said, and I think you agreed, that you're like 6 months away from something? I don't even know what.
So, 30-second description of what's going on.
Yeah.
There is a group, CPCNH is a enabling legislation, enabled by the legislation, and is an aggregator, and has set up a lot of the templates for the legal process that a town has to go through in order to actually go out and start, join and get bargains in power. But first, what we have to do is get an agreement from the select board to let us join them in no kind of binding way, just to start taking advantage of their
Right.
resources. And it's a long process, we're all on a really steep learning curve, and don't think that, and then the next thing that has to happen is it has to be approved by the town, that the town would want to
So the
join.
earliest the town could approve that would be a year
Next
from now.
Exactly, town meeting in 2024.
So, excuse me, is that the join the Community Power Coalition?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, for the town to join the Lyme, the Energy Coalition, and start to actually buy power with an opt-out option for citizens at that point.
So going back to something you brought up earlier, Mark, and I don't know the exact terminology, I think you'll know what I'm talking about, and you can tell me what I mean. But you had some concern that if commercial outfits attracted enough Lyme households, and Lyme wanted to supply its own citizens with energy, there would need to be a big enough buy-in to make that possible. Does that ring a bell?
is this from a prior meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And from a letter you wrote,
Oh, okay,
relating
yeah.
to Kearsarge, you expressed concern, as I recall, and maybe I'm misquoting, that
yeah.
if Kearsarge applied enough,
So much of the electrical demand would have already been covered.
would already have been covered, so there wouldn't be enough volume to make the town's effort worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, these two efforts, community power and group net metering, are, two ways of achieving the same goal, basically. And so, if you go really heavy into one of the two, then there won't be much load or reason to do the second one necessarily, but you could certainly do both. And both of them relate to these larger ground mounted systems. And so that's why I kind of feel like it would be nice to figure this out a little better and perhaps be a little bit more permissive in terms of size, given that the state says you can net meter systems up to 1 megawatt of capacity. So if that's the case, why are we limiting the capacity to 400 or 500 kilowatts?
The other thing that, this kind of goes together with the notion of Lyme supplying Lyme with energy. In the energy chapter, it quotes, I guess it's a quote from the vote that, whatever that, I don't know what you call it, that the town voted in
Yep.
favor of, that really moved things along. It said the town voted overwhelmingly to collectively pursue the goal of achieving 100% reliance of clean renewable sources of electricity, and by 2030. And you would know better, but my impression of that, or maybe it's just my interpretation, was that the town, I'll ask it as a question, in your opinion, was the town voting that reliance on clean energy is Lyme specific?
Yeah, I don't think that was part of the ordinance, so that's not necessary, that's not a requirement.
No, not part of the ordinance, part of what the town was voting on. I don't have the wording of it.
No, sorry, did I use the word ordinance? That was not part of the.
So it was just a
the warrant.
general thing?
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Any
So-
source, any renewable source.
okay.
And I think just to make this clear, I do have the language here. It says, to that end, in 2020, the town of Lyme voted to pursue a goal of 100% reliance on clean renewable sources of energy by 2030. And then it talks more about heating and transportation by 2050. And so, I take that to mean if we generate enough to cover, if we're generating enough in Lyme to cover what Lyme actually uses, whether these electrons flow from my solar panels to Tim's house, or whether they just get pushed out into the grid, but there's rough parity, I think that would be a desirable thing. I think tying it to say, well, how is Lyme gonna benefit from this? The fact is, we all benefit from it.
Yeah, we do, but Lyme is, I don't have an answer to it. I'm concerned about it because the energy that, like with things like the Kearsarge thing, Lyme is gonna be making sacrifices to do these things. And I'd like to see the town come first, I guess is one way of putting it.
Can I ask you to be explicit about the sacrifices that the town will be making?
Sure, like with, use an example of a 25-acre clear cut, that's a big sacrifice. And if there are multiple of those, I consider it a big sacrifice.
Although-
Absolutely, including the ecosystem sacrifices.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, just to clarify, I think 25 acres, that would probably be more like a 5 megawatt system, not a 1 megawatt
Yeah,
system.
that's
right.
pretty big.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, while you're on that, can people actually build a 5 megawatt facility? Or you mentioned the limitation is 1 megawatt for net metering, but are there allowances or rules that would allow a developer to build a 5 megawatt facility and
Sure, I mean.
what would that, where
Yeah,
would
I mean-
that power go?
Right, so a developer can build as large of a system as they're able to. You know, if they can secure land leases along a big enough area to build a big project, they can do that. Then they can then try to sell the power to a utility through a long-term contract, or they can sell it on the spot market in the ISO New England market. So there are a couple different ways they can do it. 5 megawatts is kind of a magic number to some extent, because New Hampshire does now allow municipalities to build 5 megawatt systems and group net meter them to other municipal loads only. Residential customers cannot participate in that. It's just a municipal thing. It can go up to 5 megawatts, so maybe that's where the 25 acres came from. I don't know. But for residents, 1 megawatt is still the limit.
So one thing that you're raising, I think, is something that we should discuss, which is, does the board think it's reasonable to, let me give a preface to this. Yes, I guess you pointed out, the board has worked its tail off on this all year. That's not an excuse not to reconsider. How does the board feel about going ahead with this versus putting it off for another year?
I really appreciate the input that we've received. For me, I would support going forward with the amendment. I see having large solar system attached to this amendment as a way that this amendment would get voted down. And I feel like there are benefits in this amendment for it going forward. For anything large, I kind of am with you. I feel like it really needs to benefit our community. To Rich's point about, well, it benefits all of us in the world, and it's like, yeah, the coal mines did too, you know, and there's a huge, I mean, I really feel like we need to get to the bottom of the whole kind of net carbon positive aspect of cutting down 25 acres of trees and getting solar, and what does that really amount to? And I know that the numbers are slippery, but I feel like in the next year, we need to understand that so that we can actually say that's a really positive thing for the world and possibly our community. So I would support going forward with what we've got, because it's small, it's limited, it gives people certainty about what they can do, and it shows that actually we are supporting solar. I feel like if our group, the LEAC or whatever it is coming forward with a idea for like a group net metering in our community that would benefit our community, that would be a reason to go forward with allowing larger systems. I also feel like if the town were doing it, it would not have to conform to zoning necessarily, and could go ahead and do it in some way. So we wouldn't have to allow them all over town. It was interesting, Ross, that you brought up that company's name, because I just looked it up, and they're from Utah. And I don't know if it's because you got kids in Utah, they found you, but to have a group in Utah come to Lyme, looking for land in Lyme, New Hampshire strikes me as, something I really don't necessarily want to have happen.
So, I mean, I'm a little
that's where I
concerned
am.
about that too, and I'm a little like, I felt Kearsarge was being, pretty aggressive, and, I'm cautious about, it is a gold rush, and they wouldn't be doing it if it, it's great. I'm happy that there are companies that are doing this, and I'm happy that they're making a profit. But like with, the reason we're here is to make sure that projects like these are acceptable and appropriate for Lyme. And things are happening really fast. I'm a little concerned that we're behind with things, you know, apropos to what exactly is the net gain and everything, yeah.
So I was just gonna follow up and say, you know, if the board were to delay the vote for a year, you know, one thing you might wanna do in the intervening period is, one thing that I think would be useful would be to just do some mapping, basically overlay various map layers, you know, transmission system, tax maps, you know, topographic, you know, satellite imagery, that kind of thing. And just figure out where in town you could potentially do some of these larger systems without having to, you know, clear cut 5 acres or whatever. And I think that would be informative and maybe just provide a better sense for, you know, what type of scale we're really talking about here. I mean, is it just, you know, 2 or 3 potential sites? Or is it 10 to 15 potential sites?
Well, yeah, I agree with that, because I mean, one of the questions I've been asked is, with the current large SES, how many is this gonna allow? We don't know. And that's a pretty major issue. I'm speaking personally, I feel a sense of urgency, which makes me, on the one hand, wanna go ahead with this, but I feel at the same time, very uneasy that we're doing things that we're not really clear about. Yeah.
Just want to throw out maybe another complicating issue.
Oh, good.
But before doing so, I point out that there are, when you start talking rooftop versus other, rooftops vary tremendously in this town in terms of square feet. My view is that if you use rooftops, that avoids a lot of the damage that would otherwise occur in the town environment, since the roof is already there. The other thing I'd like to bring up is that one of the big downsides of solar, of course, is that the sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day. And it was partly for that reason that instead of buying a diesel generator for standby after the 4-day outage when I had just come home from the hospital with a new knee,
Oh, boy.
and my wife couldn't pull the rope on our generator hard enough to start it, I decided I'd either get a new diesel generator or I'd buy batteries, and I bought batteries, and I've been very pleased. And there are a number of people in town now who have battery standbys, and so far we haven't burned up any houses. And batteries are getting safer. Batteries now can come in a semi-trailer that holds an iron-based battery that has no lithium in it, and it has old car parts in it, I think, instead. The batteries come in a turnkey operation. It's a semi-trailer, or they can take what would be on the semi-trailer and set it on the ground for you. They're rather large at this point, but they seem to last forever.
Well, I think, you know, in terms of the roof stuff, we're all on the same page. And I think we've made the roof stuff as easy as possible.
And, but I think if we really want to avoid all of the brickbats that would come at anybody who wants to put in this complete solar system, we have to address this storage issue.
The
And
battery.
that probably is gonna be best done in the form of one of these large liquid batteries that would have to be shared in the town. And that could give rise to a town-based battery, which would be the organization that basically linked a bunch of households into a small grid.
Well, I'd say, realistically, that sounds great, and that may be where we're headed, but in terms of this amendment, I don't think we're gonna.
Yeah.
Can I ask one?
Please.
So, Vicky referred to the fact that if the town did it, then the zoning doesn't apply.
Yeah,
So potentially, I mean, we've had the model of Lyme fiber. So we could potentially have that kind of model for a municipal solar array
it's a great model.
on some 25-acre plot that could be
Yes.
found. That would be a candidate for CPCNH to buy power from.
That would be, I mean, my
Which would then
opinion,
be
that
the-
would just
then
be
the
ideal.
distribution part
But that would have to be
would be done.
town land, town funded to do it before, there's a, what they call a municipal exception
Right.
for zoning. So anything that a town does, it is exempt from
Right,
the zoning, but you couldn't have a private company like Lyme Fiber come in and build everything on private property.
But you could, I mean, the mantra in this town for as long as I can remember is, fundraising. And if, I think this would be a pretty popular fundraiser.
Oh, absolutely, but I'm just clarifying that
Yeah.
it needs to go
Yeah,
through
I don't think
the
that would
town,
be,
not,
right,
So, so one thought here would be that since things like are a year out for the aggregation stuff, we could sever the larger system off of the zoning amendment and just allow things up to 2,000 square feet. And have the next phase be the ones that would deal with that kind of, and that would preserve the good work that's been done up
I
until
think- I mean-
now and not kneecap any
Future
future
stuff.
effort.
I guess
I think that's, I mean, I'm just hearing it, but I think it's
I just thought
appealing.
of it.
It's appealing on first presentation because of the issues that Mark raised. And if we are gonna, I just feel like we're a little bit ahead of the information that's coming in, and that would give us more
We
flexibility.
get some companies to come in and talk to us too.
Yeah, we'd get more experience about
Yeah.
what's going on. David, did you want to say? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. You were just giving signals to Seal Third, I think.
And I wanted to, put in a comment there to Mark's question about, would we, salt the earth by passing this current amendment? Would we make it difficult to get something larger? Would it be possible for us to have a, statement either in the amendment or, a statement of whatever to say, we are explicitly not deciding on considerably larger systems because the information is still coming in, because the LEAC has a lot of work to do. And to say,
But that's not true, Rich, we are deciding on larger systems, this amendment prohibits them.
Well,
yes, okay,
all right.
let's pretend that's not a problem.
But let me, I think
But
let
is
me
there
answer,
something we could?
let me answer your question, not in terms of what my opinion is about it, but in terms of feasibility, and I think the answer is yes. We couldn't do it in the amendment, but we have in the past, basically presented,
Mhm.
like a paper on our thinking and why we were doing something, so I think it's doable. But I'd like to get, the board's reaction to Hebe's suggestion. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I was gonna talk more about, whether we wanna put this before the town. At the last meeting, I was leaning toward putting it up for the town this year, but I think in thinking about it more, I agree with Mark, and I think David Cobb too. It just seems like it would be better to have people vote on one amendment, or one whole thing for the town. And I guess my question would be, if we don't put it up, what would be the negative, would there be any negative impact in the next year for anybody doing solar? I mean, we can do rooftop anyway.
I mean,
What would be the?
as far as rooftop, I think the current way I look at rooftop is, it's just another roofing material. I don't,
Right, so that's
so
not, so that
that's
doesn't
not, you're
count.
not adding footprint, you're not, the ordinance's proposal limits your ground-mounted systems on a lot to what you have available for lot coverage, which is what's happening right now. I would do the same thing. I would look at it and say, it's a separate structure, and it is,
Does the amendment change how you calculate the surface area? a little bit?
it clarifies.
But you're doing essentially what the, what this amendment.
I'm doing it essentially the same,
Right.
you
So
know,
what we're
and
saying,
I certainly would have no problems looking at doing it by, you know, because it's not explicit, it's kind of up to me to how to define that, and I'm, you know, perfectly happy to look at it the way the amendment, because I think it's a very reasonable way of,
so David, what I hear you saying is that if we don't pass anything this year, it wouldn't really affect much, right? I mean, as far as.
the only thing it
people
would
doing-
affect is if you had a system, if somebody wanted to put in a commercial system up to 20,000 square feet, they would not be allowed.
Right.
Which would
And
be,
if you believe Kearsarge, there's none of those, so.
Yeah, there are. There's- yeah.
Oh, could you guys clarify when you say like it would not be allowed? I mean, I guess when I hear that, I don't quite understand whether that means.
When what would not be allowed?
Well, because, well, even if the zoning amendment passes and you have a 20,000 square foot limit, could someone still come in and propose like a 40,000 square foot system and just require like, I don't know.
They could propose it, but, you know, people
Without-
can propose things that are not allowed by the zoning ordinance, and they generally will not be allowed.
Okay.
The planning board could not approve it, because there's nothing written into the zoning ordinance allowing them to approve a greater amount. You could go to the zoning board of adjustment and ask for a variance.
Okay.
But you would have to, it's a very strong argument that what you're doing is creating a hardship, and
Okay.
the hardship is basically defined as you wanna do something your neighbors can't.
Got it.
And that's very hard to prove.
Yep.
right.
Or, I'm sorry, you wanna do something that your neighbors can, but you can't. I'm sorry, I spoke wrong on that.
So what's the bottom line? Are we saying that? if
The
we
bottom
don't
line
have-
is,
if next year, if we don't have any zoning amendment, then,
The only difference will be that if we don't,
So we can have
if we
commercial.
don't try to pass this, then the larger solar systems will not be allowed.
larger than 2,000.
Right.
20,000.
No,
Up to
the
20,000.
ones between above 2 to 20 would not be allowed.
With the,
Right.
Would the ones up to
Well-
2 be allowed?
and I should also clarify, it's not quite that simple. You have a specific amount of lot coverage available
Right.
to a lot. If you are doing a commercial system in the rural district, no, you can't do that. If you're doing a larger system to supply your house, your business, then you would not necessarily be limited by the 2,000, you'd be limited by what you have available for lot coverage.
You could conceivably go to 26,000 square feet.
Right.
And if you had 26,000 square feet of available land in the commercial district, and you had that lot coverage available, you could do it
Yes,
today.
today.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, well, I guess my feeling is that I still think it would be better to do one amendment and try to figure out the whole thing. And have the town vote on that rather than twice and make it more complicated.
And you could look back at like Keene's, where you have small, medium, and large systems, and put, you know, these types of things like Kearsarge wants to do in the next tier.
okay, so I'd like to poll the board, people to say whether they wanna go ahead with this. There are three options: go ahead with this, go with Hebe's idea, or kick it to next.
I'm not sure I understand Hebe's idea.
Hebe's idea would be just to keep the first part of, well, why don't you state how
Well, the first two levels are essentially what David's been managing, but this would make it explicit. And then the next year, when aggregation is possible, also gonna be on the town warrant, have rules that cover 2,000 square feet and up, to include these larger megawatt.
2,000 or 20,000?
Well, it's up to 20, so it goes from just above, 2,000 to up to 20,000.
And
So
then-
he's saying exclude the 2,000 to 20,000.
Yes,
So Hebe's idea, or your idea is, we propose to the town at this town meeting, just the small part of what we've
Yes.
Just a
created.
small
And we'll leave
SDS.
everything else.
and let us develop either the 2 to 20,000, or even the 20,000 to, 50,000, or whatever a municipal system should be sized, get more data.
Yeah, I mean, I
get
think
more
with the
information.
municipal systems, I don't, if we could get to that, I don't think there'd be anybody against it, or there's always somebody against, but very few people against it.
There are people in town who are opposed to larger systems, I think.
Period. But,
You know,
but,
they wanna retain the rural character, they don't wanna drive down the road and see swaths of solar.
yeah, but I think the vast majority, my private polling company, Delusional Incorporated,
Yeah. Why?
I would imagine that we would easily have support, or the town would easily have support for a large array that was purposed to supplying the
Maybe.
townspeople with,
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
and there'll always be people against it. So, okay, so let's get an understanding on the board. David, what are your thoughts?
I was initially opposed to presenting something that wasn't complete, feeling like we ought to, do a full package, but, I'm feeling a little more, uncertain about that now. I think I might be willing to move forward with just what we've worked up.
What we have,
Yeah.
okay.
Or what Hebe's.
What do you think about Hebe's?
I haven't really thought about that yet. That involves a big change. Whatever we do, I think it is incumbent on us to have, put it out to the community and gotten feedback on it. So if we're gonna substantially change what we've already, and with what we have here, or what we've put together, we've done that. We've circulated it out, we've got comments, we responded to the comments. If we're gonna make significant changes to that in any way, including cutting it in half and just presenting half of it, I think we ought to go back to the community and re-solicit input.
So, then discounting Hebe's suggestion, you're now you're where on?
Yeah, I think,
Well, let me just step back and say, we do have another, this is the first hearing. So we have 2-week break, so tonight is not a commitment.
It's a 3-week break,
3 week?
yeah. You can't meet, if you're changing the amendment, it's a 15-day.
Oh, that's right.
Right,
So it's
yeah,
not
you'd have to
true.
have the meeting,
But we have that date reserved.
February 2nd,
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, so we have a break.
Yep,
Tonight does not have to be,
you're right.
does not have to be a hard decision, you know, a final decision.
Honestly, I could go either way.
Okay, so hold that thought for a few weeks. Rich?
And I'm gonna pass, since I don't vote, I wanna hear what other people say, and.
Well, no, it's not a question of voting, you're on the board, I'd like to get your thoughts.
I am equivocating here.
Okay, the joint,
So,
we've got a lot of
right.
equivocating, that's fine,
Yeah,
and
I
understandable.
mean,
Wow, Rich, unwilling to express his views
No,
on
no,
something.
I mean, I can make a reason.
I'm gonna go buy a law.
Yeah, right.
You're not gonna send them into the penalty box for 5
Well,
minutes.
the reason is,
argument for either, and so I'm gonna.
No, that's
so, yeah.
totally fine. You wanted to say something?
well, I just have one other comment, for what it's worth. I think we were inaccurate on the questionnaire that we sent out, because we were comparing the size to the Lyme Common, with 20,000 or 2,000 square feet. I think we said it was gonna be, what, half the Common or something, and actually, it's twice as big as the Common.
I think that's the biggest flaw in
Yeah,
what we
so
did.
I think maybe, you know, people certainly got the wrong impression or wrong
I,
idea.
I have to go back and look at that, can I?
I have it,
I don't think we have our,
somewhere. But.
I
we'll-
do think,
we'll-
I do think what, the way Mark characterized my view is correct. I think if we go forward with our current proposal, the chances of getting next year or a year later, a standalone provision that deals with big systems passed at town meeting are small.
Okay, and so two things about that. First, in the future, we will be consulting you, Mark, to tell us what David thinks. And, you know, I'm not
I have
sure.
an agent. Wow. I've always wanted to get with this person.
I don't know the answer to that, whether that would be the case, but it might be. Your feeling?
I think we should go ahead,
Uh-huh.
and I think that, there's a lot of learning and information that's gonna come out of this Lyme electric aggregation work with the CPCNH, that, I mean, we've gotta start laying the groundwork for the town having a better understanding of how solar could work for them. And I think that there'd be enough understanding of the new paradigm of the aggregation, enough time spent explaining it to people, that the thought that then, we may need to now enable some larger systems, some megawatt or larger size systems, might just be an easy flow from that and not poisonous or salty. or
Yeah, I'm not
sweet or
sure that
something.
that would be poisonous. It might be, but you would like to go ahead?
I think it's worth trying.
I'm still standing by what I said.
What'd you say?
What is it, you wanted to do what?
Well, I'm just saying that we should do one amendment.
Yeah, so does that mean, so you would prefer to wait?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think, as we were saying, I don't think it's gonna make a lot of real difference if we don't have an amendment as far as what people are gonna do next year.
Okay,
I mean, that's sort of what it comes down to, I think. And if it really doesn't make much difference, then, and I think, who knows, we might wanna modify what we've already done. We might learn a lot more in the next year that might even affect what we've done already.
working with the aggregate committee closely to gain the information that you're learning is gonna be important.
you know, it's a big asset.
Yeah.
I sit in on the energy committee along with Mark, and there was, at the meeting this week, there was a lot of discussion about that committee feeling like, wow, we should really have worked more with the planning folks on the solar amendment, and we should maybe be
Yeah,
more
I
involved, we
mean-
have expertise, we have a whole, you know, some of this is a subject that's important to us, and maybe we should have scheduled joint meetings and stuff.
See, I'll go on to how I feel. I think I said earlier, I feel a real sense of urgency about this. You know, like, just, okay, this isn't perfect, but let's just get something done versus a serious concern that we're not quite sure of what we're doing. One of those things being, we don't know how many of these sized arrays we're permitting. And we also, I think, communicated to ourselves and to the town inaccurately, possibly, if those numbers are right, that company gave to you, then we were way off, and you were talking about what we used as an example. We were way off on what we told the town, the size these things would be. So, I'm definitely open to putting it off, and I'm really on the fence. If people make a really good argument to go ahead, I could see going ahead. We have this break. I can tell you that when Kearsarge came in, so many new things came up for me that it completely altered the assumptions I had made prior to that. So I'm a little bit on the fence, and I apologize for that, but it's just being honest.
I worry a little bit about the accuracy of the factual information that Kearsarge provided to us. I would.
Oh, yeah, I mean.
I think that a lot of that might have been self-interested, and it sure would be nice to have a disinterested
Exactly.
expert that could advise us.
And what you're saying, David, about, I think we really do need to work with more directly. We'll have to figure out how we can do it legally, with public hearing, but we need to get together with the Lyme Energy Committee, or at least members of the Lyme Energy Committee who can teach us stuff. And I think your role is really important, because you're our conduit. And if you wanna, I don't know, can you bring other people from that committee?
Well, I mean, it's Jim Nurse and James Graham.
Yes, so if you could bring
Sure.
them, we could all get together, we could learn.
Those people can attend one of our public meetings, or we could have a joint meeting with the Energy Committee,
Yeah.
as long as it's noticed appropriately.
Just as long as we notice it, yeah. How do you feel?
Well, yeah, and I think initially I was, I wanted to be able to bring something to the voters, but I guess I feel similarly, I think there's a lot of things that we don't know. We don't know exactly where the three-phase power is in town and where we're potentially opening up. Ross has been contacted.
Yeah, we're three-phase power.
Well, we're still talking about the Baker
I don't know.
Road. We don't even know about that,
I don't know.
Well, there is three-phase on Baker Hill,
which we didn't know about.
which we didn't know about,
How far up?
All the way.
all the way to Goose Pond Road.
Yep.
And then towards
Show
Hanover.
you the
What for?
it's, the co-op brings their power in.
Yeah, so, I mean, this is an example of assumptions that we made that we're not clear about.
So I think when we, I think some of the input that we got was, these big systems are maybe appropriate in some, certain places, but it looks like we've got, most of our major thoroughfares and then some of our more rural gravel roads are potentially sites for, these systems. And I think to Mark's comment, maybe the size that we're restricting these to is too small. I mean, I certainly don't wanna see dozens or I don't know what the appropriate number is, but.
Well, we can't,
We can't control
we
that.
can't say, Lyme is only gonna have 3 of these, or Lyme is gonna
Right.
have 5 of these. We pick,
Unless
areas.
there's a zone or something that you
We could,
create
we could designate a zone,
for power generation.
Lyme,
But I think I
slopes
feel
or-
comfortable if it does, I mean, it seems like we are doing, private individuals are doing, I think, Mark, did you mention maybe 10% of the households now have
Yeah, it's like 12, maybe 12%, something like that.
12%?
Yeah.
So, I mean, people are doing it, and it sounds like we're not further restricting things. I guess I would not want to just do the small systems, because that may imply that that's all we really want, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I would be, I guess I would be okay with holding off.
Everybody remember that you don't have to commit to this until next time, but what are your thoughts?
If everybody wants to hold off, I'm fine with holding off. So, but you know, my also other thought is maybe with the gains in technology, actually a 20,000 square foot system could one day generate, in not too far the future, you know, a megawatt.
Right.
So I'm not sure I'm gonna be 100% about going into the large system business here in town at all. One thing, you know, I really do wanna know is if it's a net positive carbon-wise.
I agree with
And
that
so,
100%.
you know, in that I don't really wanna see solar farms on ag soils, and I don't wanna see them in wetlands. Then, okay, then we have left is kind of forested lands, and, my way of thinking, the forest is a really important component of the carbon balance, and, we grow trees really well here. So-
Yeah, I mean, I follow this stuff, and a recent report says that the effectiveness of carbon capture in forests is increased significantly the more complete the canopy is. But anyway, you know, that's a discussion for another time.
It's not the size of the stem, it's how many leaves there are.
No, this was just in terms of the coverage, not, I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about, but it was a
okay.
different issue.
Yep.
Regardless, you know, I mean, these are the discussions we would need to have going forward. But it sounds like there's a possibility that we'd be willing to put this off for a year, which on the one hand, I gotta say is heartbreaking, you know, all the work, but I mean, it wouldn't be wasted.
Is what we're looking for, I mean, in the next year, for me, I'm not really looking for where you would put something bigger than 20,000 square feet. All I would want to know is, like, the potential number of the 20,000 square foot ones that we would be allowing under this. And what else are we gonna know? I mean, I know we're gonna find out a
Well-
lot more about community aggregation, fine, that's like a, you know, construct,
It's not a supply thing.
no. And so that's not gonna help us here, I mean, you know, so I'm just saying is that, what are we really looking for by punting a year?
Clarity.
Yeah.
So,
Clarity and maybe addressing the possibility of larger systems under certain circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, consider, I mean, I know that that's.
Yeah.
I mean, you may be opposed to that, but
yeah.
But that's
Okay,
something-
but that's what everybody wants to know, okay, I
That's-
just wanna know what our goals
I
are
think
in the year, so that we're
clarity,
focused.
what I mean, what I think we've overlooked are, our information is not entirely accurate.
Yeah, I think we've overlooked where and how many, right?
Yeah,
Which is
and also if
pretty
we
major.
provided inaccurate information when we were polling the
Yeah.
town,
Yeah.
that's really a problem.
yeah, that's a problem. So, do people wanna decide this tonight, or leave this, and maybe?
There's no reason to have a special meeting if we're gonna.
Well, we're gonna have a meeting anyway, right?
No, but we don't have enough time to have a hearing if we decide to go forward, I mean, we'd have to go with this.
Yeah, it would have to be this or nothing.
This or nothing, yeah.
Okay, well, what's the board's pleasure?
I'd rather, you know, work on the housing chapter or do something different. But, you know, just because
All right, so I'm gonna go around, does somebody want to, well, we just.
I'll make a motion that we take another year to
Do we need
look
to
at this.
do we need to make a motion for that, or is it just, we
No.
just decide? But anyway,
Decide.
David is suggesting that we wait another year.
We spend another year looking at
Spend
this and
another year
refining
looking.
our proposal before going to
Yeah.
town meeting.
And let's just go around, I mean, this isn't, we'll go with the majority, or we can go with the voting members, but I'd like to get everybody's opinion. So, David, given that you said that, you are willing to do that?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I won't be broken if folks wanna go the other way.
You know, but this is, thank you for being the one to put it forward, Rich.
I listened to everybody, I think we should go ahead.
Okay. Amy?
I'm of two minds, but I think that it's worth, going ahead.
Okay,
I agree with David.
okay. I am definitely of two minds, but I see a value, and I see a downside, but a definite downside, but I'll go with putting it off a year, regrettably.
I feel the same way.
Punt?
Punt, God. All right,
You probably should just either have a second for David's. and
I'll
do a vote.
second it.
okay.
I'm sorry, I should have done this first. You don't object to this, do you? Us waiting for a year?
Oh, not,
It doesn't sound like this inconveniences you, but I wanna make sure that we're not
to be
imposing a
completely
burden on
and
you.
totally honest, you know, my opinion doesn't matter, but that's,
But it's
well,
being,
I have no,
No, you don't
dog
have a
in the
dog
fight.
in the fight, but yeah.
I think the board would benefit from having another year to look at this, to spend more time. I think there were some assumptions made that were good assumptions, but may not be as true as they
Might
could.
be accurate.
Yeah, and so I think going another year, and, you know, we all spend a lot of work on this. I do like Ross's idea of trying to map out where
yeah,
we can put these things. I mean, we have the technology, I have the ability to do this. We just need to set up a criteria, and
Awesome,
I
okay.
can do it. So I think, for me, I personally think waiting another year is a good
I
play.
mean, really, this is a learning situation for all of us. This isn't the normal zoning amendment that we get.
Our work's not wasted, I mean,
No,
what we do is not wasted. Yeah.
I wish, well, whatever. All right, so going forward, let's do the minutes.
Do you want to do a vote?
Oh, is this a formal vote?
I think
Okay.
since the motion was
So
made,
you made a motion.
Vicky seconded it.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Um,
All those opposed? Okay. And shall we go to the minutes?
I thought the minutes were fine.
Anybody think they weren't fine? Okay.
Oh, I had a couple of little,
All right.
you know, put a lawyer on.
Yeah, well,
committees to your
that's
power.
great.
In the paragraph beginning, item 1, there's a tense error or a verb error. Right about in the middle of the paragraph, there's the word does, and it should be do.
Okay, if you hold on just a second, I forgot to print out a copy, so I'm just
Yeah,
gonna.
you can just take mine, I made a couple of.
Okay.
They're just minor things.
Yeah, they're little
All
stylistic
right.
things, there's nothing.
So I'd like,
You,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended by David Kahn. Vicky seconds, all those in favor? Okay, good. So going forward, we have the less exciting floodplain ordinance that will go before the town. And let's get started on the housing.
Should we, I wonder if there is an expectation in the town that this is coming at the town meeting, and I
Yes.
wonder if we should prepare some
I
sort of
think we
communication
should prepare a
to tell people
communication.
what we're doing and
Yeah.
why.
I agree. Anybody wanna do that? All right, I'll do it. I was hoping there'd be somebody else, but, I'll come up with something and then we can all
Okay.
play with it. So, housing, and obvious, so we're gonna have to work on two paths, which, you know, is unfortunate, but we need to, this has to be taken care of, and we have to get started on the housing, so, how do people wanna go about that? Put a time limit on each thing for each meeting, or go, I mean, we do wanna have continuity with these things, I think.
I don't see how we're gonna go much further on the solar until David gets a time to do his mapping.
Well, I think maybe next time we can take some time and lay out what we wanna, you know, basically what we're looking for in this coming, 6 months, that we're gonna get
Yeah.
something in that time range.
And as far as, the mapping, just, I need to know what it is the board
Right.
wants to, what criteria the board. There are some things like three-phase power, after 9/11, all the, utility information has been pulled off any of the public servers for data. So I don't have any of that. There's a lot of stuff I can do. I can see where, like Rich and I were looking at the utility cuts along Baker Hill Road. So we can see through the canopy where.
I've been driving down Goose Pond Road, I'm like, no, not here.
How do you
We're
tell
also
if it's
dangerous.
three-phase power?
Well, you can see that where there's a utility cut, and then you'll have to go look at the lines. And then, but I wanna work with Mike Kinsley and Aaron Rich, because they will probably have a better understanding, and probably Sean also, as to where these are. And then we can, we know that three-phase comes into the Dorchester Road just before the skiway for the co-op, we know where that comes in. I can track it back along through based on the aerial photography, or at least I get a pretty good indication where it is, and I can.
Just to ask New Hampshire Electric Co-op or Eversource.
Finding the person to ask is again, because of the bombings, they don't like to give that information out, so, I call someone and say, I work for the town of Lyme, they say, oh, sure you do.
But didn't that guy from Kearsarge say he had a map of the three-phase, and I thought he sent that?
He said he would and he did not, but there were a lot of things he said that.
Yeah, I don't think we can rely on a self-interested party to provide, we need to get that information
Okay.
ourselves.
And, a lot of it, you can drive the roads and, just by looking at the power lines, you can tell that they're.
Exactly. Are
There
there
are three
three
things.
little things on the top, or just one?
Yep.
Right.
Doesn't the town tax each of those poles? And so wouldn't we be able to trace it from
I don't know if,
taxing?
there is a tax on it, but it's a value, it's based on value, but I don't know that
Oh, okay.
it necessarily distinguishes between single phase and three phase. I could
Okay.
ask, it's possible,
Yeah, I don't know, I just, thought maybe,
I think just, a quick conversation with Mike never a quick conversation with Mike Kinsley, but, we can chat with Mike Kinsley and Aaron and get a really good idea, where that service is, and then, go from there.
So what I think the board needs to do for our next meeting, which will now be when? If it's not the second,
It'll be the 26th, it's the next meeting.
okay, the 26th, is for everybody to think about the questions that they have, but to really, we need to be much more focused this time around. So come up with anything you think is gonna be helpful. And Mark,
Could we invite the energy? Would
Yeah,
that be a
I
good
mean,
time to have a joint
I'd like to invite anybody from the Energy Committee who feels that they could contribute, if they could come next time, and we probably will be inviting you and them a lot.
Sounds
And-
good.
John, just, I do have some other business for the board for
Okay.
the next meeting,
Okay,
so.
we'll get to that in a minute, and Hebe, if you can, bring,
If I knew some, yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
bring any information and people that you can.
John, I think, just a question, if a quorum of the energy committee comes, then does that need to be noticed as a meeting for
Yes,
them?
it does.
And minutes taken and all that?
Well, it can be joint minutes, so
Okay.
that's not an issue.
And then the same with your committee?
yeah, it is a town committee.
Right, so
Yeah,
then
so
that- so we have
it
to
just
make
would
sure
be,
we have it
So
noted.
why don't you preemptively notice it?
I'll just notice it as,
For all three
yeah,
entities.
John, I want to point out, David, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the 26th when the DRA is coming in the evening?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, that's right.
yeah, they're at 6:30 at the school.
So should we do February 2nd anyway?
Yeah, we should move.
Let's
Yeah.
go to February
Yeah.
Well,
2nd.
is that going to be your next meeting?
Well, that was gonna be the special meeting.
Yeah, so, I'm just looking at the,
We already booked.
yeah, the
that.
9th is the, your actual meeting.
Right.
So we'll have two.
So,
I got that number loaded in my brain.
The February 2nd, and then we're gonna have one February 9th.
So you're gonna add an additional meeting for February 2nd?
Well, because we're losing the 26th, so it's not an additional meeting, it's just
In
moved
lieu of,
to a different time,
February 9th.
right?
So we're not gonna have a meeting on the 26th.
Well, no, you, I need you to have a meeting on the 26th because I have scheduled people to come with other business.
Oh, God.
And that's our regular meeting, the 26th?
All right, so
We're going to solar that night.
we won't do solar that night. What's the next meeting after that?
The next meeting's the 9th.
Okay, so that, Mark and Hebe, it's for the 9th, not the 26th,
And not the second.
and not the 2nd.
That's why I was trying to say earlier that I had
Yeah, got it.
business
Got
for
it.
you for that.
So, and David, when's the property tax meeting? Is that the 20th?
The-
I
That's
think
the
it's
26th.
January
Oh,
20th.
man,
At 6:30 at the school.
yeah, so we don't have any choice, we have to miss that,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, David, what?
The other business that
You
you
have
have
to go to
scheduled
that
for the 26th can't be moved, or?
Well, I've
Which
already,
date is
you know,
that?
I've been
26th.
trying to get people,
Okay, well, that's
set
not as
times for
important
them.
as the,
Okay.
as the
So-
9th. You can be here the 9th.
Yes,
John, I'm sorry, but I'm out of town on both the 26th and the 9th.
Well, you know,
You know what, I'm on the same schedule as you are.
Oh,
Same
no,
cruise?
really?
You're on
are
the
you,
same
are
cruise?
you out?
We may not have a,
Are they on a
Yeah,
cruise?
they're on the same
Are you
cruise
going
together.
on the cruise together?
Yeah,
yeah, we are.
Cancun with, Ted Cruz, right?
Oh, I wasn't going to the Cancun cruise.
So you're not gonna be here either, for either of those? Okay, well, we'll have to make do, but are we gonna have a quorum for, you'll be here for the 26th?
I will not be here for the 26th.
Who's gonna be here for the
I
26th?
couldn't be here.
I
But
may
we-
have to go to that.
Oh, you have, so it's just two of us?
So you can't.
David, how hard is it, would it be impossible for you to change?
We don't have a quorum.
you don't have a quorum, and so I'll have to,
Just
Why don't you-
explain there's another meeting that we have to go to.
So,
I'm available
No,
the
well, you're
2nd.
not. having a
okay,
quorum.
so can we go back to the 2nd?
hey, you can add an extra meeting on the 2nd.
Well, it's not extra, because we can't have one on the 26th. And you can get those people in on the
I
on the
won't
2nd.
guarantee, I don't know, I'll have to,
What's,
tomorrow I'll
what's the
have to.
nature of the,
There are one issues. One is a lot merger, which should be very quick and easy. And then the other one is they're applying for a second residence on their property under lot size averaging. There is a clause that basically says if you could subdivide but don't want to, the planning board has the authority to allow a second.
Anyway, they're gonna be coming. I want to address this gentleman here who has so faithfully attended, but who has not said much, which is a very sign of intelligence. But I do want to hear more from you. What were your thoughts on what we have wrought here? Where would you have come down?
yeah, I think I probably would have postponed it, you know. I don't have the knowledge of the procedure here, so, you know, the issue of only commenting on part of it and not the other, I'm not sure what the ramifications of that are. You know, I am sensitive to the fact that you don't really wanna say that you can't have the large system. The large system may in fact be what the town wants, if it really wants to fulfill its goal. So in the end, you may have to allow, you know, that. I understand that you're sensitive to influencing the town and not having to go back to them and ask for something that you've already said you didn't want. So I think in the end, postponing actually was the easiest thing to do, to try and learn more about all these issues. I think the idea of mapping and getting a sense of how big an issue is this gonna be makes a lot of sense. Then at least you can go back to the problem and think of it in terms of how much impact is this gonna have if this does turn out to be something that happens in multiples. So postponing makes sense, mapping makes sense, and I guess I would have been a vote for that.
Thank you, that's, it's good to hear your feedback, and I'd like to, as we go forward, you've been coming to everything and listening, very patient. I think it's time for the board to ask questions, if you have any, and then consider this gentleman for an alternate. So keep that in your minds for next meetings.
So, just so I'm clear on, you're gonna have to cancel the 26th,
We don't have a quorum,
so we will just cancel the meeting
well,
outright.
the idea was we would do the second.
Yeah, so but I wanna make sure we have a quorum.
All right, who
For
can be
the-
here on the second? Okay, so we're good for the second.
All right, so I just wanna make sure I can tell the applicants.
We're gonna have a quorum. And then the ninth,
And please express our regrets too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry to do that to people.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
do it very often.
that we'd never.
It's the state's fault.
Yeah.
Sam Green.
That's right.
Who used to be a member on this board.
That's right.
Yeah, Sam,
You know, it was really interesting sending him, like the hometown favorite.
well, he got a promotion, so now he's like the head of, yeah, a lot of it.
All right, are there any other, yeah, so I would, if anybody has questions going forward, and not necessarily for tonight, but, because I think it's time we did something.
So are we agreeing that we're gonna be talking about and inviting the energy committee?
On the ninth.
Oh, on the ninth,
On the
okay.
ninth, that's gonna be energy and, it's LEAC?
Yes.
So we'll be there.
We will be there.
Electric aggregation.
Oh, you, both of you won't be.
We both, no, we're on the same, come on.
Yes, right, again,
We're trying to keep it quiet, okay?
Thank you, I'll not spread it around. Would it make sense not to have that meeting,
Which one?
not to have all these groups together if two of our,
You're not available on the ninth?
you know, neither
No.
of you.
Oh.
Right,
Oh, that's a good point.
That's a good point.
yeah.
Well,
Well, there's no huge rush, right?
no, it's always, there's never a rush until it's a rush, but,
No,
okay, so
23rd is the
you'll be
next.
for the 23rd, was it the
I'm here.
23rd?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's-
get out your erasers,
All right.
and you get out your eraser, it's now moved to the 23rd.
Well, we're still meeting on the ninth, and just,
Do we wanna meet on the 9th? We
well,
don't
we need to,
Well, we need
to
to
deal
for
with
these.
the
I
people
thought we
who
were
are.
doing that on the
We're doing that on the
second. They're doing
2nd.
that on the second.
Okay.
Right,
Now, well,
But David, what if those
Okay.
people are coming, if they couldn't come on the second, then they might be able to come on the ninth? The two people that were,
well,
Putting on-
one of, the merger, you don't need to have them present, it's not, It's pretty much, as long as it doesn't violate the zoning, the board has to
Oh, that's right.
do that, so it's not a huge deal, it's the other,
Maybe we could give them a choice, either the second or the
No,
ninth.
it's gonna be too difficult to round up everybody. I think we should
Okay.
set our dates, and this happens sometimes.
yeah,
So February second, hopefully they can come. If they can't, let us know, because there's no point in us coming.
yeah.
And then the 23rd, where pretty much everybody will be here. That'll be the date where we're gonna ask the Energy Committee and the LEAC to join us. And hopefully, you know, maybe on, oh, no, people aren't gonna be here, yeah,
So
so,
we're not meeting on the ninth.
no.
Okay.
All right, so February 2nd and February 23rd. Oh, wait a minute, is that, yeah, that's a Thursday, the 23rd.
Correct, so, but again, 9th, no, you don't want any meeting.
Is there a point in people aren't gonna be here,
There's a lot of people not here.
and,
Well, two of us, but
Well,
It doesn't matter to me, I'm just,
Yeah, I mean,
all I wanna do is,
yeah, I
I need
think
to
that
post,
we're gonna meet
the-
twice in February, and one will be on a different date, that's all.
yep, that's not a problem, I just wanna make sure I have everything posted correctly.
That would be great.
Second and the 23rd.
Yep, second,
The 2nd and the 23rd,
All right.
until we change it again in
Holy
30
smokes.
seconds. Are there, first of all, I'd like to thank Mark and, thank you, and Russ, for coming and their good feedback. And keep coming. Any other final words?
the only thing I have is, I do have packets of information for each of the board members for, and your names are all on them, so just grab the one that has your name on it. And that just, well, just say me having put it in the mail, so I have labeled it. And
this is
yours,
the materials you got.
exact same thing for you.
Is this our payoff?
Yeah, exactly. More work is your payoff.
Tim Cook, do you still go by that name? David Kahn.
Hey, you know, there was a meeting on the 23rd, or not the meeting, but
can I just give you back
You know
my
that
envelope
that's
so you
gonna
can
be-
use it?
Oh, sure, that's fine, I just,
so that anybody could see
Well,
it.
thank you for having it already.
I will
I
be-
can see it,
I will be there, and I never go any places without my video camera, so.
I wasn't sure if there was Zoom connection.
Well, now, they don't
do Zoom.
Well, then somebody, they
adjourned?
Yeah.
couldn't Zoom right from the meeting, but they could Zoom it was
Well, then
gonna
Rich will have it.
And then
I am
make it
going
pull
to
it up
Utah.
Puts it up on YouTube.
I put it up on the.
Is that the school thing or the
We're going
DRA?
to,
The DRA thing, yeah,
That's
Thursday.
perfect, yeah, you can do that.
Recording stopped.
so, yeah,
But
skiing both
you guys
times.
are on there.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, I hope my body will
Great.
Well, you got space for me, right?
Yeah.
We just
Where are you going?